they're these perfectly good things that have all this momentum in life and then somehow just stop moving forward, abandoned by the world.
Not abandoned, kid. Clearly left behind by higher intelligence. And if you could pinpoint them all, they could lead to the biggest treasure in history.
I'm not going on this crazy adventure with you, okay?
Look, kid, you got no place to call your own.
You have to give us something by tomorrow or move out so we can get a real roommate.
You got no love life. So what do you say? Do you want to look for a job? You want to look for treasure?
Treasure.
Okay, now raise your hand if you want beet salad.
Hey everyone, Benji Carver here again with Robert Husted. I'll just say it again.
Husted. Yeah, you got it.
And so we definitely want to get to, and I think this is very exciting to talk about Treasure of the Lost Valley, an exciting short film, winner of over 51 awards, as they like to say when we got the submission here at the Warped Dimension.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. It's a movie that essentially, if you're fans of The Last Dragon, Big Trouble in Little China, and if you grew up watching all that on top of that, and also if you're into QAnon a little bit, this movie is not for QAnon, but it definitely tickles your funny bone at times about certain characters that are a little bit off, like A Beautiful Mind and Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. So,
yes.
Robert, I think your adventurer is that character. He's nefarious like that. He's the real guy that Russell Crowe played, where he was like he wasn't that whimsical nice guy that was in the movie. He was like, no, this guy like hated people.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's funny because we talk about like the character, his character in the movie is this guy who, he's sort of a man with no name and you don't really know where he came from, but he truly, truly believes that all of the shopping carts in the San Fernando Valley add up to points on a map and lead to a hidden temple with a treasure inside of it. And I'm sort of working on a longer version of it now where he does actually have a little bit more of a backstory. But when we were making the movie, when we were figuring out his costume, we were talking about like, what would his look be? Is he just going to look like this badass cowboy? Because for years I was just sort of, drawing these little storyboards of this, cowboy guy who leads them on this adventure. But when the practicality of his costume came up, in the script, he talks about how he used to be a cart collector and how he actually used to look for carts as a job. And the decision was made to sort of have his lowest layer be this cart collector vest. And yeah. And it just started to make sense to me of, oh yeah, I like that because he could just be this lunatic. I mean, you really don't know until they get to the temple, but he could just be this guy who was a cart collector who just slowly started building up this like Leone type, like Fury Road sort of ish armor. And I just like the idea that, he could be a complete lunatic. Like until you actually get to the temple, he could very well be just this crazy guy that just decided to build himself up. So yeah, I mean, I got to say like Greg as that guy, I mean, I think he blew all of our socks off because I mean, really, I don't think he's a classically trained actor. He hosted Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego and he was hilarious on it. But all of us were just like, man, he was capable of such menace. I mean, he really was like a kind of a creepy dude in that part and really took it seriously and so grateful that he was in it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, but we also have the great
Lori Beth.
Lori Beth, Denberg here.
Yeah.
In that. And how did you find Lori Beth for this part?
I wish I could take credit for finding Lori Beth. Actually, so she is now she has a podcast now called Bad Advice with Lori Beth. She was part of the reboot of all that. Prior to that, when we started first kind of getting the movie together in like 2017, she was just kind of taking a break. I mean, she had all these years where she was on like the Steve Harvey show. She was, and she was in all these movies. She was in like Dodgeball and she took kind of a break, and she was sort of like exploring different things. And one of the things that she was doing was she was officiating weddings, and she still makes good money doing it, and she's great at it. She actually married my friend Chris, who's really good editor. And it's like I get emotional when I think about it. But when I started to figure out how to make the movie, I didn't know how I was going to make the movie, but I thought, I got to do something. So I decided to have a table read. I didn't know how we were going to do the VFX or how we were going to get the money to do it. And I just started to get people together, and I said, let's just do a table read. And I was reaching out to friends to see if they knew actors. And my friend, who had been married by Lori Beth, he was just like, I could ask her if she wants to come to the table read. She's pretty cool. She's not really like doing anything acting wise at this very second. She was in like an episode of Workaholics where she was pretty funny. But she's like, yeah, I'll totally come to your table read. She came to the table read. She killed it. She was hilarious. And afterwards, I was like, would you be cool if like we like ran a Kickstarter campaign? Like, would you be a part of it? And she's like, you want me to be in the movie? She's like, I thought you just wanted me to be in the table read. I'm like, you're Lori Beth from all of that. Like, you're like, every time we would go out with her, people would just come up, and the love that her audience has for her is just so huge. And so yeah, long story short, just asked her because she was cool enough to marry my friend, and because she was cool enough to come to the table read. And she was sort of like the den mother that kind of like kept us all together. And she's been in show business for so long that she was totally cool about, everything that happens on a low budget movie, which is, the shooting days going a bit long and all that stuff. She couldn't have been cooler. She was awesome.
She doesn't have to be annoyed by Amanda Bynes. It's probably why.
So the funny thing is, the funny thing is about, so it's really funny. She was actually, because we would say to her, we're like, who are you, closest to on the all, like we were just like, like what, and it's funny because she didn't have anything negative to say, but she's just like, she was super close with Amanda, and she's like, Amanda was awesome. And we were actually, when we were having the All That castmates kind of like share the Kickstarter campaign, which they all did, they were all cool enough to at least tweet it out. Amanda was sort of still off the grid at this point. I think she might be back now to some extent, but we were just like, man, how cool would it be if we're her first tweet when she comes back? It wasn't meant to be, but she, yeah.
You should have hired a costume designer, a costume assistant, fit him. She was already fit him this whole time.
Man, that's right. That would have been amazing. Yeah. No, but it's funny because she did talk about like what an interesting experience just being like, she would regale us with all that stories when we were, when things were between setups. But she did say, she's like, Amanda's the greatest, and Keenan was really nice, and Kel has the biggest Twitter following. I would have thought Keenan because he's on SNL, but Kel is he's like a Christian comic. He has like 90,000 followers on Twitter. Fun fact.
It's something that we do at the Warped Dimension is the VHS nights. I'm definitely procuring a copy of Kel's comic video.
Oh my God, please. That would be awesome. That would be, you could host the hell out of that. That would be amazing.
Have you seen this it's like I don't know if it was supposed to be a variety show. We don't really know. It was like a direct-to-video thing.
This is like a real thing. Oh, I didn't even know this was I didn't know this.
I'll look it up. I can't remember exactly what it is. But yeah, it's special.
I would like to witness this. When we saw his Twitter page, somebody was like, "Yeah, you should check out his stuff. It's interesting." And I'm like, I now want to watch it even more. I'm so
But you are in something that we've been talking a little bit about, and you'll see in other episodes. It'll be a long couple of minutes.
For the next 7 episodes, you will hear
film, which it has a length to it, which is very appropriate. It's like one of the things. Like I was like, oh wait, there's a part 2 to this. But I just love the nature and the attitude of like you have these darker edges, but yet at the same time there's I hate the word whimsical or whatever. It's like, but
I don't hate that at all. Please, because I grew up reading Calvin and Hobbes.
I think it's whimsical in that sense. When people might describe it as, I think that what I loved it. We had another film, but actually, I'm interviewing with them on a later episode. Seriously, the Problematic Time Traveler deals with a lot of. It's in West Oakland, and it's a character from the '80s who's now in the present day West Oakland.
Oh yes, I saw I think they had a trailer for this that looked freaking awesome. Yes, this
So
was
your guys' stories is interesting because it's like there's these darker edges that are around it, but how do you handle that material and it be this really like just this like great like kind of what is like Big Trouble in Little China or Last Dragon, where it's like, hey, there's this fun edge that's like there's also some like, yeah, they're like your story of the twist is there's people about to get murdered like straight up, you know.
It's interesting because one of the biggest influences was I just kept telling this to people when we were making it was just Repo Man. I remember seeing the TV cut of Repo Man, which is even more Repo Man than the theatrical cut of Repo Man, on a rabbit-eared TV when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And it blew my mind because even as a kid, without being able to articulate it, I was like, they're taking stuff that's really silly, like just really silly, like aliens in the trunk of a car, but it's set against this incredibly gritty backdrop. And when we went into the movie, I remember thinking, there's two ways we could go about it. We could go about it where it's intentionally kind of campy and like, trying to be very, I don't even want to insult a director by referencing one of them, but it's like we could sort of go that way, or we could try to go for serious, and then the whimsical stuff will just kind of be like, the icing that just forces itself, onto it, which is so pretentious. But that was my thought process. I also saw a movie just before we made it, which is a James Bridges film. Did Urban Cowboy. Perfect, the immortal Perfect with John Travolta, where he's an undercover writer of the aerobics craze. He did a movie that was actually really, really interesting called Mike's Murder. It's a Deborah Winger movie, and it was actually pre-Memento. It was supposed to be one of the first like kind of like non-linear murder mystery type thing, and he filmed it in Los Angeles in like 1980, and it is so gritty. I mean, there's like a drug deal scene at a Tommy's hamburger place. That the movie would have been perfect if it just had that. It's like the perfect cult movie. It had a Joe Jackson score that they got rid of, but you can still buy the album of it. Anyway, I tried to sort of, the one thing that I tried to keep in mind while fumbling through the dark and trying to make the movie was, LA has this rich history of movies that can feel lighthearted but also gritty. And I would actually throw Valley Girl into that too, because there's parts of Valley Girl that feel
super high. I think everyone thinks it's like stoner comedy, but it's all about teenage women, rights, teenage girls' rights, and
yeah, agreed. Yeah, no, that's another great example. Yeah, there's LA
at San Fernando Valley too.
No, it absolutely does. Fast Times. And it's funny because you're actually making me think of, so there's Fast Times, and then it's like I was in the back of my head, I was also thinking of like, Massacre at Central High, which is a very, obviously much darker film, but it just, yeah, there you go. There's one. I just dropped my headphone. I got so worked up, but yeah, you're right. Fast Times is a great example of, it's Cameron Crowe. It's so written Cameron Crowe, but directed by Amy Heckerling, but so lighthearted in some of the writing, but it's like the grit just comes out. Like you can't like, it's something that you can't really put your finger on. Like with New York movies, I feel like you have to make a choice and either kind of go the Abel Ferrara route and really film in a really truly scary part of town and make it look like that, or you go the Warriors route and you make it more theatrical. The thing about the Valley that I just got struck by was, you really just had to set up your camera and film. I mean, it's like this Wild West. Like I was like, how are there not? I mean, PTA has his whole Valley, thing, but the fact that I'm like, how has nobody made more like just weird, whimsically gritty adventures? I mean, like there is Repo Man, but I mean, like there isn't like a history of them. And I thought this is uncharted territory. And so the long answer to a short question, or a totally normal question, is I think it was a combination of I tried to use the movies that I was inspired by to sort of weaponize what I was going for. But really, I think the star of the movie, aside from Lori Beth and Greg and Everardo, it's the Valley. I mean, it's the intersection of weird and scary, but also kind of sweet. Like it just is. It's the best way to describe it.
which is a great way because I'm as a filmmaker myself and a storyteller. It's like, but also just in movies is land is character. Land is something that.
Oh yeah, great way to put it. Land is character. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that that I've really always been involved in. It's like, well, okay, how do you make that be the, and this way it is the star kind of thing. And I think that's really something that's really cool. And I think it also just hits at the right time. There's just some great laughs that you give also.
Thank you.
Especially like in the sense of when the gang, it's like, we're not a gun gang, it's like almost like, it's like in an era when we have like everyone's wearing guns, or you watch like a satire, like I just watched The Hunt, where I'm just sort of like, okay, this is too goofy, but then it's like, oh, but we have, everyone's gun toting and stuff like that. And I'm like, kind of thing. But the thing is that
yeah, totally, yeah.
I feel like there's these great setups and great punchlines and stuff like that are coming into it. Is this expanding out into you talked about drawings and stuff like, is this as an animation series or as a feature film that you have in mind? So.
Well, it's funny you ask. I recently, I would say last summer, I wrote an expanded version of it, not knowing what the heck it was going to be. I was just like, what? And it's a weird feeling if you've made a short, and I've never experienced this, and you like the short, and then you expand it. It was so easy to just write it and make it bigger, which I really thought was going to be much harder because I was like, I feel like we've kind of explored everything, but it's like all this stuff just exploded out. And I think the only way that it makes sense is as a series. And I was hoping to maybe just have like a nice feature to peddle, but it's like this monstrosity. So I eventually kind of split it up, and it's like, it actually fits very neatly into 6 1-hour episodes or 12 30-minute episodes if anybody's watching. But yeah, basically, I think the randomness of the short is the saving grace of expanding it. There's more gangs, there's more treasure, there's a larger sort of quest that's at play, and there's more villains, more people for the protagonist to interact with. I think in the bigger version we kind of get into how Jake ended up in the valley in the first place. You sort of find out that maybe there isn't just one temple. Maybe there's like a whole series of temples. Maybe there's stuff that you could combine and form one giant super treasure. And but the thing that I'm trying to be cognizant of is, the short was written from the perspective of like a war correspondent walking around the valley. Like I got a lot of ideas for the short actually just walking around. So it's really easy to try to write something that's big and expanded and huge, but I keep thinking like I have to sort of reread what I've written through the lens of I'm now going to go out and make sure that it kind of maintains whatever reality it could have. Because I think the virtues of the short, for better or worse, I think are, a lot. It's taking what's there. It's the Robert Rodriguez thing of just kind of like taking what you have and trying to make something cool out of it. Like I'd hate for it to be like in Wayne's World when, Benjamin buys their show and they have like this shitty theme song that they use now. And it's like, it's the commercial version of Wayne's. Yeah. Like I wouldn't want it to be that. So,
Noah's Arcade, sponsored by Noah's Arcade, which is like totally them selling out, even though it's like a guy who runs an arcade thing and it's Brian Dolebury.
I was gonna say, like, we should all be so lucky for Noah to, and I would die if Noah's Arcade would sponsor,
As if people are watching it and seen, I am living my Wayne's World life right now.
Dude, we're on Wayne's World. This is awesome.
I thought about that because there's just some of this thing where it's like, okay, how long is this gonna last, kind of thing. Yeah, like ideally, like what I love about talking with every filmmakers here, especially with genre, is of course the dream of getting to make a feature film or making features, which is I think what drew us all here.
Totally, yeah.
Now we're in an interesting, more iconic of TV series, shorts, animation. But I just like seeing something like that. Like, yeah, I just want to see more of the more the hidden temples, of the valley. Jake's adventures. If he's not to give anything away, but is there more to Jake before or after, kind of thing?
Well, thank you for all that. Yeah, and you're right. It's almost like there is more of a shift now to like, are people thinking about it more as like content? Like, is it like, is it going to be a feature? And without trying to, I mean, the good thing about expanding this is that I think it's almost like it could exist in any form, hopefully. But I think, you know, because so little is known about the backstory of so many of the characters in the short, it's just like it can't not lend itself to just expanding more of the backstory. So without giving too much away, there is possibly a brother that Jake had that he, you know, we never got into in the short film. He may kind of go to look for him in Los Angeles. He may be part of a gang that makes the Rooftop Rebels look like a bunch of cream puffs and are even more original in how they exist. And I mean, you know, Big Trouble in Little China is a really great example of, yeah, kind of like establishing a reality and kind of saying, yeah, there's an underground to all this. And what I love about Big Trouble in Little China is that, you know, Repo Man is so much fun because it talks about how, you know, there is all this stuff beneath the surface. But what I like about Big Trouble in Little China is like, yeah, there's stuff beneath the surface, and you have to be grateful that there is a battle between good and evil beneath the surface. Like, we are only here because heroes like Jack Burton are fighting beneath the surface, literally beneath the surface, to keep us safe. So that's definitely an idea that I've had in my head for the expansion. Is it's not just an opportunity to kind of, you know, build the cast of characters. It's also an opportunity to maybe say the quest that was in the short film is maybe part of a larger quest. And maybe there's like a rich tradition of these types of quests that maybe have kept us safe for this long. And maybe we'll be threatened if the quest isn't solved this time. It's not just about finding treasure. It's about saving Los Angeles.
Well, it's interesting. Like you mentioned Repo Man and then Big Trouble in Little China. I also said Last Dragon. I think has a lot.
100%. Oh my God, you hit that on the head with Sho'nuff's gang for sure.
Oh,
yeah,
I mean,
Last Dragon.
Sho'nuff.
I was gonna say.
And so the thing is that, you know, what I think also you might have potential is that if you expand it into is sort of what Big Trouble in Little China, what I love about it, and also Repo Man does is whose story really is this? And I enjoy about with Lost Treasure is that it's a little bit of like, well, it's Beth and her husband, Molly telling Dan and Molly telling the story.
Right.
But then to this realtor, who's this realtor, and then in Jake's story, it's adventure story. I love that it's like this ensemble, and then of course, you know, a reveal of who the adventure also is in cahoots with, as well. Also the gate guardian, like it's like. Because in Big Trouble, primarily, it's not Jack's movie. Actually,
no, he's the sidekick. Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing. That's the thing about it. He's there's the two ways you can play modern John Wayne. You can either play it like Jack's character, who's totally like the side character, actually, right. Or you do it like the adventurer, where really he's actually this, you know, kind of devil kind of character.
Yeah, you're right. He really is kind of like, this is what maybe, you know, if you literally took a John Wayne archetype, maybe he would have been the villain, like in this. No, but you're right. That's something that I've also been trying to be very cognizant of is, you know, it's very tempting to kind of take like a typical like Joseph Campbell hero, you know, hero's journey type of thing, where it's like, yeah, Jake is now the Luke Skywalker of this. But then I go back to the short and it's like, yeah, but it's sort of this nested doll thing where it's like this whole thing is a flashback and it's all being told by these people in the future. And, you know, there's almost like a Bill and Ted aspect to it of like, you know, well, there's the future effects of what happened with Lost Treasure. And then there's the, you know, what it really is just kind of like this blank canvas that, you know, and that's also a unique thing with a short film, you know, that anybody, I mean, I'm just thrilled that anybody likes it, let alone, you know, an awesome person such as yourself and your awesome festival.
51 Awards also said, you know,
I mean, that part is, and we were so happy that happened that I think you guys were actually like the 51st, which was so cool. It was like you guys were like the 51st.
We're Puerto Rico. We're Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Proudly. We're so thrilled. Yeah. But yeah, that's another thing that I've been thinking about too, is like, you know, if it's expanded, like, am I going to do a disservice if like certain possibilities aren't expanded? It's kind of like, it's like a Rubik's Cube meets like a, you know, a pinhead puzzle box. It's like, oh man.
I think overthinking it, but I think that there's just so much potential there for more stuff. I mean,
thank you.
Like, I don't want people like, oh yeah, they got that. It's like, no, it's like this is clearly like a great example, like a pitch pilot for, you know, a bigger movie or for a series. So I think.
Oh, thanks, man.
Great,
I hope so. It's funny because it's almost like nothing would make me happier and everybody else as cool as it would be to film more live action stuff. If it was a Saturday morning cartoon, I'd be 100% okay with that. I don't think there's any scenario where that could happen. We used to kid about like how Saturday morning shows would just like add an arbitrary like magical flying like little creature. We already have that. We already have Slorg. So maybe we could already have like a Slorg doll and stuff. But yeah, no, I would love that. It's like I remember reading once that they were thinking about making Escape from New York the series, which is hysterical. Like I'd love to watch a series where every single episode.
There's a comic series that Carpenter helps write. I know that Jack Burton and Snake Plissken exist.
That's right. They interact. That's right. Which is, I mean, honestly, I should be reading. I haven't quite gotten to those yet, and they've literally there's one of them sitting in my living room, and I'm like, I think for the Lost Treasure series, I should look to those because it's like. It sounds like they were a cool expansion of the Carpenterverse. So,
Yeah, that's what they are. I mean, so something that's interesting is that, and that's where I'm like getting more into who Robert is. So you're primarily you went to NYU Film School, I believe.
Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut. So I grew up in like the real Calvin and Hobbes backyard type of stuff. And I totally like just was inspired by that stuff growing up because I basically loved anything growing up that made the suburbs seem magical. So there was a series called Erie, Indiana that used to be on TV back in the day.
Dante produced.
Dante produced. Yeah. And he laments.
That's what it reminded me of actually is Lost Treasure has that tone where there's these darker edges around.
Man. It's really fun. I never thought of that because I definitely subconsciously, yeah, I love that show. I never even thought of that. Wow.
That episode when he finds out that he finds the script and he's actually a part of the show. And
That's
like,
right.
It's genius. And you're like, there's a whole thing that I go on to. Craig, our co-host on VHS, as mentioned. I've tried this. One day we'll hopefully do this. Is this book of me watching one season shows once a week per week for 52 weeks.
I love that idea. That's a great idea.
I got halfway through for one season, but then I somehow wanted to double up and get more in. I don't know. But it's interesting. Like that was one of my, I remember watching it and being like, oh man, I never saw this from beginning to end. It's like, this show is genius. Like, man, it sucks they canceled that show.
It was super genius. And like, if I may say, I think there's an absolute Dante influence on Lost Treasure. I was obsessed with a movie called Inner Space growing up, which, is like a cult movie that I remember my dad was really great in showing me high concept movies that whether or not they made money, I always thought they were huge hits. Like he showed me Inner Space when I was a kid and I was like, wow, this must've been the biggest hit. I don't think it lost money, but I mean, it wasn't like a blockbuster, but so it screwed my wiring up because I was like, oh, cool. This is the type of stuff that you should make to be a blockbuster. And it might not be. I don't know.
I know. It's interesting because The Burbs was besides Gremlins growing up.
The Burbs. That's a good one.
Burbs is like one of I'm obsessed with that movie. I think as a kid,
it's great.
It came on out of nowhere. I didn't know if this was being funny or if it was being dark, and at the end,
right. It does walk that tightrope.
One of the best dream sequences ever in a movie.
I agree.
Yeah, and it's Tom Hanks that we don't get anymore.
Totally.
Fisher is like horribly underused in that movie and knows it. And if you watch the movie, she kind of is like hinting like, I'm just here.
She's like, I'm just showing up not to be Princess Leia.
She's a Wally character in like some ways. It's like, oh, we're here in some ways. So,
it's really funny because one of the reasons why the draft that I had for years of Lost Treasure, the bookends weren't part of it. And it was funny because when Lori Beth got involved, she's like, I'm not pressuring you at all, but she's like, I'm super happy to be in this, but she's like, is there an opportunity where I could be in it maybe more? And I was like, yes, the future, black and white future with flying cars. So that, I think she's really awesome in it, but yeah, I mean, that was the whole bookend thing was kind of an attempt to like, she needs to at least be able to play like more than one character in this. I mean, she's such a cool sketch, comedian. She deserves to dress up as an old lady and be in the future,
If you ever really make it, you gotta get Rick to come and to show up somewhere.
I heard that he passed away. Is he still alive? If he's still alive, he's in.
I
He's
thought
totally
he
in.
was alive.
Gotta look this up. Gotta look this
Sorry,
up.
my IMDb database breaks down, folks.
Dude, come on. I mean, I
I know
hope.
you have it up there. No, it's like you're like me when I the first time I saw Last House on the Left, I was like, I gotta put David Hess in something, and he had just died. I was like, damn it! Oh my.
He was the Duke Amon of exploitation movies. He has passed on, by the way. There is no more Rick Duke
did die. When did that happen? It's
Which
like
is really sad.
like
But you'll love this though. The headline when he passed away in Hollywood Reporter: Rick Ducommun, nosy next door neighbor in the burbs, dies at 62, which is a great tombstone epitaph, I think. So
I think maybe that's for his cameo. Should show. I need to write your story of this. No, it just reminded me of this moment when you remember Joe Polito, who's like in Rocketeer and all the,
Miller's Crossing, primarily Rocketeer, but yeah, Miller's Crossing.
And The Crow. So I saw him at Cantor's one day. And
oh, cool. Okay.
I saw him at Cantor's, and then I was like, oh, is that? I thought he died. In the back of it was like only one moment where I was like, I thought he died. And then sadly he died like less than a year later officially. And I was like, and I was like, wait, and I was like, did he have a brother? Did he like in my mind, my skull like fracturing, but it was one of those like moments.
But there is a movie where he has a brother. I mean, which doesn't sound like anything remarkable, but I'm specifically thinking of a Polito performance where he has a brother, and I wish I could remember. But another remarkable Polito performance. Yeah, he was.
If you want to get into weirdly, I would say like, well, if the adventure, I mean, Greg did a great job, but get Bill Paxton, I think you'd be wait.
So can I just say one of the biggest regrets ever. I worked at a company called they no longer exist, Open Road Films. They did Nightcrawler. They did some really cool movies back in the day, and then they.
What did you do for Open Road?
Oh, I was only there for about 4 months. I was like a post coordinator, so I was, I had a very interesting boss. He was like old Hollywood all the way, like a total character. He was like Don Simpson light. He was like a very interesting Hollywood character. Yeah, not so much like abusive, but just like he definitely loved to party.
Like flush face, always like trying to quit smoking but can't quit smoking, so he just pop and
the first part 1,000% for obvious drinking reasons. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know what? He was still smoking. We'd smoke in the car, but so my first day that I was there, I found the production binder for Nightcrawler, and if I could call 2 people in Hollywood and just talk to them, Aykroyd, and who's probably not even in Hollywood anymore, or Paxton, because I mean, my buddy and I, we wrote a spec script for Bill Paxton years ago that he would have been amazing, and totally crazy spec script, and found the Nightcrawler production binder, opened it up, Bill Paxton's home number's in there, and I remember taking a picture and sending it to my friend and saying, we got to call Paxton, and then never did, and I think like a year later, he passed away, which is like, I remember going to see Near Dark at the New Bev. It was about a week after he passed away, and I think Adrian Pasdar and the kid that played the adult that played the vampire kid in Near Dark, all they did was tell Bill Paxton stories, and it was just like huge regret. But no, Paxton would have been amazing. But Paxton, if he could have been involved in Lost Treasure in any capacity, would have been, I mean, he could have been like the adventurers, the Lee Van Cleef that's like, also hunting the adventure. I mean, he would have been amazing.
Yeah, that's the sad part. Well, there are a few names I will not say out here that could definitely support that world of the larger than life crazy characters that you could definitely bring into. Because it'd be great. Like it's the kind of show also that you could definitely bring in like characters from what you did with Lori Beth, but kind of through happenstance. But that be like these cameo performances in your story that are like, oh shit, like did you see so and so, it's like,
I feel like it's weirdly easier to pitch as a series because it's like if somebody would talk about like the adventure tone of it, super easy. Briscoe County Jr. I would be like, that's the adventure tone. Like Briscoe County Jr. meets Repo Man. I mean, I'm sure there would be something for Bruce Campbell in it if he's if he wants to stop by, sure.
I always was told if you have a paycheck for Bruce, he's always there. That's what I was like.
I think he's in that kind of like Bruce Willis sphere where it's like this is his rate. He'll show up and he'll do it, which is, I mean, listen, I remember going to see Bruce Campbell when he was promoting Army of Darkness at Fangoria Weekend of Horrors in '93, and it was. He's never stopped being magical to me. He's through all the movies, he's never stopped being Bruce Campbell. I don't know. It's
So I was doing a little research, kind of shifting gears.
Yeah.
IMDb says that you were David Spade's stand-in for Eight Heads in a Duffel Bag.
So this is really interesting. So when I made my IMDb page, my friend, okay, so we were chit-chatting a little earlier about Trauma. I, helped out on a short film that Lloyd Kaufman was in.
Mm-hmm.
A buddy of mine, I think he like made an IMDb page for me. So he started putting like a couple of those credits up there. And then I kept adding to it. I helped out on some VFX stuff for like one of the Harry Potter movies, but on a very minor level. Yeah. I got to the point where I discovered that there's another Robert Husted whose sole industry credits are, it's like David Spade stand-in on Eight Heads in a Duffel Bag. I think he was like a PA on a Goldie Hawn movie called The Banger Sisters.
Yeah. That's on there too, yeah.
So, and I think like one other movie, and I remember, so I petitioned, so IMDb is like, they're like the Ministry of Information in Brazil. It's like this massive bureaucracy where they have to review all the requests. So I was consolidating all the Lost Treasure stuff, and I was like, I'm actually, can I just be Robert Husted? Like, I forget so this is how messy it is. I had all my Lost Treasure credits on one Robert Husted thing. Somehow my earlier credits had merged with this guy's Banger Sisters, Eight Heads in a Duffel Bag, which I'm more than happy to take credit for.
It's a great one, actually. It's not like some rando like student film.
I mean, let's be honest. I could be David Spade's stand if I had to be. And then somehow IMDb was like, yeah, you can have this one page. And then they just merged everything. And I've been writing them since then. I'm not the Eight Heads, and I'm not David Spade. I'm like, this guy must be pissed. Or maybe he's happy that he's also a writer-director of Lost. So whoever this guy is, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get it. I mean, maybe I should just be.
We can talk about IMDb. We've talked quite a bit. And thank you so much, Robert. I mean, on this, it's true.
This was fun.
Not one, there's not two. There are 3 Benji Carvers that are all me on IMDb.
But you know what, Benji? There can be only one. So one day there will be the gathering in the future when the Eco Shield starts to.
And there's a Ben Carver on a couple other things. There is a Leonardo Delise, which is my actor credit. It's my homage to Italian cinema. That guy, he's now like he's a certified producer and actor. It's like.
Is there an opportunity for us to do like a Strangers on a Train type of thing where I could get rid of your extra Benjis, you could get rid of my extra Roberts? Like we'll rid each other of our excess.
Quid pro quo, sir. Quid pro quo. I mean, Robert, it's been a pleasure on this end.
This is awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. This is so much fun. I'm so glad that I'll be on your next 10 episodes. This is
where
amazing.
Can we find you, Robert? Also, on the websites, all that.
Thank you. You can go to there's ltotv.com, which really sounds cooler than it is. It sounds like it's like the TV network for Lost Treasure. It's not. It's the acronym for Lost Treasure. But that's got all our screening dates and stuff like that. We're on Facebook at Lost Treasure Movie, Instagram at Lost Treasure Movie, and we do have a Twitter called Cart Wrangler. Oddly enough, there was a Lost Treasure movie taken for Twitter, so there's a Cart Wrangler. But
probably a Cinemax softcore porno.
Yeah.
But and also as well is Lost Treasure playing anywhere in the next few? I know is it still?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, geez Louise. I actually have to go to our website and check this now. So we're actually going to be playing in the UK in November, which is really cool. We played in the UK once at this festival called Starburst, which is not the candy. I didn't know this. They're like a huge sci-fi magazine. So they're like their Fangoria Starlog type thing. We're playing at another one called Para Cinema, which sounds really fun. It's in November. So that's late November. We're playing at, I can rattle these off real quick. the Mystic Film Festival, which is Mystic, Connecticut. It's actually not mystical at all. It's just Mystic, Connecticut. That's this. When's the 23rd? That's this Friday. We're playing at this in an actual theater this Friday. We're playing at something called the Urban Action Showcase. Are you ready for this? Urban Action Showcase International Action Film Festival, which is a virtual film festival that is November 6th through 14th. Paris Cinema, which is November 19th. We're playing at one called the Great Northern International Film Festival in Vancouver, British Columbia, which should be a hoot. It should be super fun. And right now we're playing in one called the Santa Fe Independent Film Festival, and we're also in one called the Glendale International Film Festival, which is they're super nice. And yeah, we just had a drive-in debut in North Carolina at a comic shop, which sounds amazing. They're called Con Carolinas. They gave us a very nice award, and they kept trying to have drive-in screenings. They kept getting canceled, so they just said, we're going to put a screen up at outside of a comic shop in North Carolina.
Any magical way of telling people that they're watching here about how many, like, this is amazing that you've been able to get to all these festivals and with a different running time length? We're always told, like, make it under 20.
Yeah, I will say. Oh, as far as like advice or anything like that, as far as
like just end on, it's because I think it's so amazing that you've been able to have such a successful run when
Oh, thank you so much.
People, they're just like, yeah, we got into some festivals, but a lot of our festivals said no, and I'm like, it happens. You don't know. It's like,
you know what I would say. My really good question. My one piece of advice would be. Definitely. Well, luck plays a part of it because your festival was like our favorite, like hands. It was the coolest festival ever. So we're so lucky to have been in that. You do luck out sometimes. I mean, sometimes like you come across a really cool one, like Another Hole in the Head, Mr. Hole Has Warped festival, which is amazing. And this is how much I've talked. I couldn't even remember the full name. Mr. Hole Has Warped Dimension. We were so lucky to play in that, and not all of them are that cool. Some of them are. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that actually happened. What I would say is, if it inspires anybody, yeah, we've probably only gotten into maybe 40% of the ones we applied to. We just cast a really wide net. What you should do is, if you're raising money to make a short film, or if you're just saving money, put a shit ton aside for festivals. We didn't think of that, and we kind of ended up, paying through the nose in the end. But that's totally okay. But I would say, don't be afraid to cast a wide net. And there's a lot of festivals out there. And if you've made a genre film, there's probably more opportunities than anything else. I mean, don't stick your head in an oven if you didn't get into Slam Dance or if you didn't get into South by Southwest. There's so many cooler festivals out there like yours that like make you feel like you made something awesome. And really there's like 2 or 3 ginormous ones, and there's every other one. And in our experience, we've had so much fun playing at all the ones that we've played at that I wouldn't trade the experience, for the world. If somebody could say, you know what, you can make your movie again, it'll be a normal length, which would have also gotten us into more festivals because ours is gigantically long, which I'm working on one that's 7 minutes, which is a little bit more normal. But if somebody would have said, yep, you can make your movie and you can play at Slam Dance, or you could play at all these festivals you got to play at, I would be like, I wouldn't trade our run for the world. It's been so awesome. So
I think it's a great run. That's something I wanted to highlight. Yeah, that was here.
Thank you. Yeah, we've actually, I have the number right here. We've officially been accepted into 67. We haven't played in all of them just yet, but
yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think on that note, definitely when it comes to your town, and there's a lot of places it's been playing, or if you're out there, definitely check it out at a virtual festival if you have out there. Robert talked about. It's been a pleasure on this end. We definitely will. It'll be a few parts this episode. We talk about a lot of things, but it's really great to connect with the filmmaker. That I think it's the beautiful thing about doing this. We have the time more so now than in the past. It's one thing, the better things in this world, and we
totally.
And digress, but and also I don't mean to take lightly on the QAnon stuff. I think it's just funny is that in some ways this is your material of conspiratorial stuff is what I enjoy about conspiracy, and QAnon has ruined it for that level. I enjoyed the Mel Gibson movie not because it was real, it was because of batshit crazy it was. So, and Patrick Stewart was behind it all.
Right.
So definitely Lost Shores of the Valley, Robert Husted, definitely.
Houston, you were so close. You were
I
this
know.
close, inches away. You were inches there. You were
You said
right
it
at the
again.
precipice. Yeah.
One day I'll get it right. It took me a long time to learn Tadanobu Asano's name, so don't get it covered.
I'm in good company. No, thank you so much. This was like the most fun ever, and we're seriously, everybody from our families to everybody on the crew, we're so appreciative about how much you liked the movie and how much Romani liked the movie, and everybody at the festival. You guys were amazing, and this was so much fun, and I'm so glad we got to record an entire season of podcasts this night. This was awesome.
Oh man! So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time in the Warped Dimension.
Yeah.